I met Claire at a charity fundraiser for a local animal shelter. I wasn't even supposed to be there. My friend James had dragged me along because his date bailed, and he didn't want to be the only guy drinking overpriced cocktails in a suit. Claire was standing by the silent auction table, wearing a dark green dress and holding a glass of wine she wasn't really drinking. She had this way of tilting her head when she laughed, like she was trying to remember what happiness felt like. I noticed her before she noticed me. We struck up a conversation over a framed photograph of a dog with sunglasses, of all things. I made a bad joke. She laughed anyway. We talked for nearly an hour, skipped the networking, skipped the bidding, just stood there with our drinks, two strangers floating in a room full of well-meaning small talk and polished shoes. I remember thinking, this is too easy. And it was. But not in the shallow, forgettable way. It was easy like breathing. Like we had known each other once and just needed reminding. Claire worked in interior design. She had just left a boutique firm to start her own small practice. I was a year into running operations at a logistics company that was finally finding its feet. We were both in our late 20s, both a little tired of dating apps and friends of friends setups. Neither of us said that out loud, but it hung in the air between us. We were ready for something, not perfect, but real. We started seeing each other every weekend. Then it became every day. She moved into my apartment after 6 months, which felt fast, but right. We didn't make a big deal out of it. Her toothbrush appeared in my bathroom, her books on my shelf. One night we realized neither of us had left in 2 weeks. That was it. 2 years later, we got married in a small ceremony just outside of Asheville. It was quiet and simple. Claire wore a white satin dress without lace or glitter or any of the fuss she always said she hated. We wrote our own vows. Mine were too long. Hers were better. I cried more than she did. My dad gave a toast that ended in something about always checking the oil in her car, and everyone laughed. It was one of those days that didn't feel like a whirlwind. It felt slow, present, deliberate. Exactly how it should have felt. After the wedding, we bought a modest 3-bedroom house on the north side. Claire turned the smallest room into a sunlit studio. She was picking up more clients, more full-home projects. I remember her coming home late some nights, her arms full of fabric samples, her hair tied up messily, face flushed with the rush of loving her work. I loved seeing her like that. I didn't say it every time. I didn't have to. We weren't flashy, but we were solid. We made weekend pancakes, built IKEA furniture together without killing each other, watched dumb reality shows at night. She still tilted her head when she laughed. Everything in our life was something we built, piece by piece. Together. The early years of our marriage moved fast, but not in a chaotic way. It was more like momentum we'd earned. Claire's business started taking off after a mid-sized magazine featured one of her renovations in their spring issue. After that, referrals just kept coming. She was soon handling full-scale remodels, vacation rentals, even a few high-end properties in the historic district. She never bragged. She didn't have to. You could see the pride on her face when a client walked into a space she'd poured herself into. I was doing well, too. The logistics company I helped restructure was acquired by a national firm, and I was offered a promotion to regional director. It came with more hours, more responsibility, and a salary that didn't just cover the bills, it started to make room for long-term plans. Travel. Savings. Maybe one day, kids. We talked about it often, always in future tense, always with the unspoken agreement that we still had time. We weren't in a rush. Our home started to change, little by little. Not just in the furniture Claire rotated every few months or the wall color she always wanted to try out, but in the feeling of it. It became ours. Lived in. Warm. Claire had a knack for making a house feel like somewhere you'd want to stay. Every room had a reason. The hallway smelled like lavender in the spring and cinnamon in the winter. We hosted dinners for friends, lazy Sundays with wine and music, and occasional poker nights where she would dramatically roll her eyes at me before disappearing upstairs with a book. Vacations became a tradition. We started small, weekend getaways, mountain cabins, lake houses. Then we stretched farther. Portugal, once. Costa Rica another year. Claire liked to plan everything down to the hour, museums, trails, boutique cafes, while I tended to just go along for the ride. We never fought over the details. We knew how to balance each other. Every night, she fell asleep with her leg draped over mine. That's how I knew she felt safe. There was a steadiness to our life, and I don't mean that in a boring way. We had ambition, but we weren't chasing anything outside of what we already had. Our goals were internal, quality over spectacle. We worked hard. We celebrated each other's wins. We had fights, sure. But nothing that didn't resolve itself by morning. That was our silent rule, no resentment past sunrise. Claire's family adored me. Her mom once told me I was the first man she ever dated who didn't try to overshadow her. I took that as a compliment, though Claire teased me about it for weeks. Her younger brother, Colin, called me the calm in her storm, which was funny because I never saw her as chaotic. Passionate, yes. Intense when she cared about something deeply. But never unhinged or erratic. She was a woman who knew what she wanted, and I admired that about her. I still do. Our friends used to say we made marriage look easy. Maybe we did. But it never felt easy. It felt like effort, the good kind. The kind you give without keeping score. By our 4th anniversary, we had everything we talked about on our second date. A home. Stability. Shared dreams. A future with room to grow. By year 5, our lives had settled into a rhythm that felt almost cinematic in its simplicity. We had our routines, morning coffee on the back patio, grocery runs on Sundays, her humming in the kitchen while I handled the bills. Every part of our day felt like a quiet agreement. Claire's studio had outgrown the little back room in our house. She found a shared workspace downtown with natural light, brick walls, and enough square footage to finally take on junior designers. Hiring her first assistant, Marlene, was a huge step. I remember the night Claire came home with a bottle of champagne and said, "I think I'm officially someone's boss now." She was nervous about it, about being responsible for someone else's paycheck, but I told her what I always told her, if you built this, you can carry it. And she did. Her work only got better. My job kept me busy, but not buried. I had a good team, people I trusted, and a schedule that let me be home for dinner most nights. Claire and I still made time for each other. Thursday nights were no screen nights, a rule Claire invented after she caught us both scrolling through our phones during a movie we'd promised to watch together. So we read, talked, played board games we never finished. It became our little rebellion against the noise outside our walls. We took a trip to Nova Scotia that summer. Claire had always wanted to see the cliffs and the lighthouses. It was quieter than our usual vacations, but somehow more meaningful. We drove for hours without talking, not because we had nothing to say but because we didn't need to. There was comfort in the silence. At one point, we sat on the hood of the rental car watching the tide roll in, and she turned to me and said, "I feel like we're exactly where we're supposed to be." I didn't say anything. I just nodded, because I felt it too. She started journaling more around that time. Said it helped her clear her mind between projects. Some nights I'd find her sitting on the floor of the bedroom, writing with her legs tucked under her and music low in the background. She never let me read any of it, and I never asked. I figured everyone deserved some space of their own. Our friends kept asking when we'd have kids. We'd smile, deflect, say something vague about timing and the right moment. The truth was, we weren't trying, but we weren't not trying either. We had talked about it, more seriously than before. She wanted to. I always pictured one. We agreed on names, at least in theory, and I remember her once whispering, "If it's a girl, I want her to have your eyes." We were planning a future, even if we hadn't carved it into a schedule. There was no big drama in our home. No secrets. No locked doors or late-night arguments. Just two people growing into themselves, together. In our 6th year of marriage, life felt balanced in a way that I never took for granted. Claire's firm had grown into a recognizable name in the regional design world. She started getting invitations to speak at industry panels, wrote a few guest columns for lifestyle websites, even did a podcast interview that she made me listen to 3 times because she couldn't stand the sound of her own voice. I told her she sounded like she belonged there. Because she did. I handled the day-to-day at work with a kind of quiet pride. I wasn't flashy, never had been, but I kept things running. I was the guy people leaned on when things got chaotic, and I liked being that. Reliable. Steady. It wasn't glamorous, but it made me feel solid. And Claire always told me that's what made her feel safe, knowing I wasn't going anywhere, that I never made promises I didn't keep. We renovated the kitchen that year. Claire designed every inch of it, of course. Marble counters, matte black fixtures, custom-built shelving. She turned the old breakfast nook into a reading corner with a curved bench and deep green cushions. I caught her napping there once on a Saturday afternoon, book still open in her hand. When she woke up, she said, "This is my favorite part of the house now," and smiled in that slow, sleepy way that made my chest feel warm. We hosted her family for Thanksgiving for the first time. Her mom brought too many pies. Her brother made his famous cornbread stuffing and argued with her about which wine went with turkey. I spent most of the day bouncing between the oven and the dining room, playing unofficial referee and making sure everyone had what they needed. Claire stayed calm, even graceful, orchestrating the day like she had been doing it for years. That night, after everyone had left and the dishes were finally done, she curled up next to me on the couch and whispered, "We did good." That winter, we traveled again, just a few days in the mountains, nothing fancy. Claire had found this little cabin near a frozen lake. It had a wood stove, no internet, and a bed that creaked every time we moved. We cooked pasta together, read by the fire, played cards by candlelight. We didn't need more than that. At night, I'd watch her brushing her hair in the dim mirror, her back to me, and I'd think, there's no version of life I want that doesn't include this woman. One night, as we lay in bed, she reached for my hand and said, "I love our life." I remember that sentence. Word for word. And the way she said it, soft, honest, like it came from somewhere deep. I didn't need anything more than that. I felt seen. Chosen. At peace. We started talking again about having a child. This time, with more intent. Claire went off birth control. We marked dates quietly, without pressure. It felt natural. Like the next chapter was unfolding right on time. The changes were gradual, so subtle at first they felt more like shifts in weather than anything real. Claire started coming home a little later than usual. At first, it was only by half an hour, maybe 45 minutes. She said she was caught in traffic, stuck in back-to-back meetings, helping a client make last-minute revisions to a layout. None of it sounded strange. Her job had always been unpredictable, especially as her projects grew in scale. I didn't question it. I knew what her life looked like when things got busy. But it wasn't just the late evenings. It was her energy when she walked through the door. Claire used to come in humming under her breath or kicking off her shoes mid-sentence, eager to tell me something ridiculous that happened on a job site. Now she walked in quieter, like she was still somewhere else. Distracted. Sometimes she didn't even notice I was in the room until I spoke. Our conversation started to shrink. She still asked about my day, but it felt like she was listening from far away. Like she was waiting for me to finish so she could go upstairs and take a shower or respond to messages on her phone. I chalked it up to stress. Her firm had taken on 3 new clients in 2 months. She was working on a hotel remodel, which was the biggest project she'd landed so far. It made sense that she was exhausted. She started sleeping in later on weekends. Claire used to be the early riser, the one who'd make coffee and sit on the porch with a blanket before I'd even opened my eyes. Lately, I'd find her still in bed at 9, eyes closed, face turned away, breathing slow but not quite asleep. I'd leave her be. I figured she needed the rest. One Saturday, I suggested we go for a drive like we used to. Just pick a direction, find a back road, get lost for a while. She smiled politely and said maybe another time. That she had work to catch up on, or she'd already made plans to meet someone from her team. That part was new, plans I hadn't heard about, names I didn't recognize. But I didn't press. I didn't want to seem suspicious. I didn't want to start treating her like a stranger. The physical space between us changed, too. Not in a dramatic way, no slammed doors or cold shoulders, but in the way she held herself around me. She didn't curl into me at night like she used to. Didn't reach for my hand during quiet moments on the couch. I still touched her shoulder when I passed her in the kitchen. Still brushed her hair from her eyes when she looked tired. But something was different. She didn't pull away. She didn't lean in, either. I told myself it was a phase. That maybe we were just stretched thin, both of us running on fumes. These things happen. Even to the best couples. Even to couples who love each other. So I gave her space. And I waited for her to come back to me. The space I gave her didn't bring her back, it just grew wider. She started spending more time out of the house on weekends. Always for work, always something urgent. A client needing her to check measurements again, a vendor showroom visit that had to happen in person, or meetings at the studio that somehow bled into dinner hours. She'd come home with bags from her suppliers, sometimes with color swatches still tucked into her sleeves, and I'd try to joke about how she was becoming a walking Pinterest board. She'd laugh, but lightly, almost absently, like she was just remembering how to. I wanted to believe her. I really did. I had no reason not to. But I noticed she stopped sharing the details she used to offer so freely. Claire used to tell me every little thing, how a client wanted to hang a chandelier in a bathroom or how a contractor misread a floor plan and built a doorway where a window should have been. Now her stories were shorter. Vague. It went fine. We're just behind on a few things. Nothing exciting. Then she'd change the subject, ask about my day instead. I answered, of course, but I always felt like she was asking just to deflect, not to listen. We still slept in the same bed, but the warmth had cooled. There was no argument, no moment of rupture, just a gradual retreat. Like waves pulling back from the shore, leaving behind damp sand where something used to be. She'd fall asleep facing the wall now. I'd lie awake, trying to remember the last time we had touched without it feeling like obligation or routine. One night I brought up taking a weekend away. Just the two of us, like we used to. I found a cozy place up in the mountains, no TV, no Wi-Fi, just a fireplace and the quiet. She didn't say no outright. She said she'd check her schedule. But she never mentioned it again. I waited, thinking she'd bring it up, ask about it, suggest a different weekend. She didn't. It slipped away like so many other things had lately. Her phone was always with her now. Even in the bathroom. Even when she stepped out to take a call on the patio, shutting the door behind her. I saw her typing with intensity, face glowing in the darkened living room when she thought I was asleep. I didn't ask. I didn't look. I told myself she deserved privacy. I told myself trust meant not questioning what you didn't understand. I kept trying to stay steady. I cooked more, cleaned more, handled the grocery runs she used to enjoy. I'd leave small things for her, a favorite chocolate bar, a note on the fridge, a playlist I made for her to listen to during her drives. I don't know if she ever saw them. If she did, she never said anything. We weren't fighting. We weren't breaking down in some explosive way. But the silence between us had become its own language. And I didn't know how to speak it. I missed her. Not just the idea of her, the real, day-to-day version. The one who danced in the kitchen. The one who used to climb into my lap after a long day and press her forehead to mine without saying a word. She was right there. And yet, somehow, I was already losing her. It got to the point where I started measuring our days by how long we went without really speaking. Not just words, those still existed. Did you eat? What time are you coming home? Can you grab milk? But talking, the kind that threads two people together, that had all but disappeared. Claire had become a different version of herself. Not worse. Not angry. Just, quiet in all the wrong places. She still did the things she always had, tended to the plants, responded to emails, restocked the pantry with the precision of someone managing a home, not just living in it. But her presence felt edited. Like someone had taken the Claire I knew and trimmed the edges down until only the outlines were left. She started sleeping in the guest room some nights. Said she couldn't sleep well, that she was tossing and turning and didn't want to keep me up. At first, I believed her. I even appreciated the honesty. But the first night turned into 3, then a week, then 2. I asked her once, just once, if everything was okay. She smiled and said, "I'm just tired, babe. That's all." And that word, babe, felt so rehearsed in her mouth it made my skin crawl. Still, I said nothing. I didn't want to be the guy who interrogated his wife every time she came home late. I didn't want to be suspicious or controlling or paranoid. I'd seen friends go down that path and tear their marriages apart with it. I wasn't going to be that man. I kept trusting her, because that's what I believed love was supposed to look like, giving the benefit of the doubt, even when your gut starts to whisper. The worst part was how normal things looked from the outside. We still attended dinners with friends. Still posed for photos. Still nodded along to the questions about when we try again for a baby. She had a way of lighting up in public, turning on that polished warmth everyone adored. No one suspected anything. Everyone thought we were the couple with it all figured out. But I could see the light go out the moment we got back in the car. I could see her shoulders fall, her eyes go distant again, her mind already somewhere else. I once caught her sitting in her car in the driveway, engine off, just staring out the windshield. She didn't notice me watching from the kitchen window. She sat there for 5 minutes. Maybe longer. When she came inside, I asked how her day was. She said, "Fine," and kissed me on the cheek like she was clocking in. There was nothing I could point to. No messages. No confrontation. No lie. Just this creeping emptiness that made the walls feel too wide at night and the bed too cold in the morning. I kept telling myself we could fix it. That it was a rough season, a long project, maybe even something hormonal. I was convinced that with enough patience, enough space, she'd come back to me. Because I never imagined that the silence wasn't a symptom. It was a choice. It had been 3 weeks since she last slept beside me. By then, I'd adjusted to the quiet, at least outwardly. The sound of her voice had become rare, something that only drifted into the room when necessary. We passed each other like distant roommates, polite but detached. And somehow, even through all of it, I still clung to the idea that she was just overwhelmed, maybe dealing with something internal she hadn't figured out how to talk about yet. I started doing more around the house. Cooking more. Cleaning more. I'd leave her favorite tea on the nightstand in the guest room. Sometimes it would be untouched by morning. Sometimes it would be gone, but she never said thank you. I didn't mind. I wasn't doing it for gratitude, I was doing it because that's what you do when you love someone. You show up even when it's hard. She was spending more time out of the house, especially on weekends. Work, she always said. Clients. Meetings. Site visits. I told her to let me know if she needed anything. She'd nod and smile, a hollow expression that told me nothing. I didn't press. Then, one Sunday evening, she came home early. She didn't go to the guest room. She didn't take off her coat. She didn't look tired or stressed or frazzled from meetings. She looked clear. Settled. Like someone who had made a decision and was no longer carrying the weight of indecision on her shoulders. "Can we talk?" she said. I turned off the TV and faced her, half expecting her to finally cry or tell me she was depressed or that she needed a break. Instead, she sat down on the edge of the couch, hands clasped together, and looked me straight in the eye with a calmness I didn't recognize. "I want to be in an open relationship," she said. At first, I didn't understand. I thought she was joking. But her face didn't shift. No humor. No hesitation. "I've been seeing someone," she continued. "Not new. Someone from before. And I want to keep seeing him." I couldn't speak. My mouth opened but nothing came out. She kept going. "You've been a good husband, but you're not what I want anymore. You've never been. You were safe. You gave me a house and money and stability, but you're boring. Predictable. You don't challenge me. You don't inspire me." She exhaled. Like she'd been holding this in for months. "I've already slept with him. Multiple times. I want to keep doing that. And I want you to be okay with it. We can live like this, quietly. You keep the money coming. I do what I need. And we stay out of each other's way." I stared at her. She wasn't finished. "Let's not pretend you'd be anything without me. You're average. You're a man with a title and a paycheck and no real spine. He knows how to make me feel alive. You just know how to keep the lights on." That was it. She stood up, not expecting me to argue. She truly believed I would fold. That I would nod and accept it. That I would hand her my pride the same way I'd handed her my trust. And in that moment, something in me snapped. The silence that followed her words was not the kind that comes from shock. It was the kind that came from fire, the slow, rising heat of betrayal boiling to the surface. I didn't raise my voice right away. I didn't scream or throw anything. I just stood there, watching her like I was seeing her for the first time. This wasn't Claire. Not the woman I built a life with. Not the woman I gave everything to. This was someone else. Cold. Detached. Calculated. I took one step forward, and she actually smiled. That smug, nauseating kind of smile that says you'll accept this. That says you won't do anything. And then I spoke. "Pack your things." Her expression dropped. Just a flicker. But I saw it. She blinked. "Excuse me." I said, "Pack your things," I repeated, my voice calm, low, shaking from restraint. "You're leaving tonight. Not tomorrow. Not in a week. Now. You don't live here anymore." Her mouth opened to protest, but I didn't give her the chance. "You think I'm just going to fund your affair? You think I'm going to pay for you to sleep in my house, eat my food, spend my money, while you crawl back to some washed-up loser who couldn't hold on to you the first time?" She took a step back. "No," I continued, "you don't get comfort anymore. You don't get the house I bought. You don't get the life I built. You don't even get to pretend we're civil. You chose your side, and you can go be miserable with him in whatever dump he's renting. Let him figure out how to pay for your candles and throw pillows." Still, she didn't move. So I pulled out my phone. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice finally cracking. "Sending a message to your family," I said. "Your mother. Your brother. They deserve to know what you really are. And I promise you, they'll side with me. Not the woman who walked out on her marriage to relive some failed college fantasy. I didn't bluff. I texted her mom first. Told her everything. Every word Claire had said. Then I called her brother. Put him on speaker. Told him she was cheating. Told him she wanted to stay married just to keep the money flowing while she slept with someone else. Colin swore loudly and hung up. 5 minutes later, her mother called me, crying. Not to defend her, but to apologize. To me. I looked Claire dead in the eyes. You just lost everyone. Not because I told them, but because you did this. You threw it all away. For what? For a man who already had his chance and blew it. She tried to speak, but I wasn't finished. You want to be with him? Then go. Be with him. And when the two of you are sitting in his cheap apartment, surrounded by empty beer bottles and dreams that never materialized, I want you to remember something. I walked to the door and opened it. You traded a man who loved you, for a man who once settled for you. And that's exactly what your life will be from now on, settling. She left. No suitcase. No dignity. Just a woman walking into the night with nothing left to say. After the door shut behind her, I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel peace. I felt rage, cold, focused, controlled. The kind of rage that doesn't scream or shake, but plans. Because if she thought I was going to just let them walk away with their lives intact, she didn't understand who she had married. I didn't know much about the man she'd left me for, not recently. But I remembered the name. Jason Keller. The old college ex, the one she'd described once as immature, but intense. I hadn't thought about him in years. But now he was all I could think about. It wasn't hard to find him. Social media made it easy. His profile was public. Still tried to look edgy at 38. Still played local gigs at coffee shops. A few grainy videos of him strumming an acoustic guitar in a bar no one had ever heard of. I dug deeper. Found his employer listed on his LinkedIn, a mid-sized marketing firm in the city. Nothing fancy, but just enough stability to fool himself into thinking he was turning things around. I made some calls. Quiet ones. An old contact from a trade convention owed me a favor. Turns out his firm had once pitched to Jason's company and still had contacts inside. I gave him the story, no drama, no exaggeration. Just facts. I told him what Jason had done. Who he was involved with. How he was sleeping with a married woman. How he was interfering with a client's personal affairs. I phrased it carefully. Legally. Coldly. A week later, Jason was called into a meeting with HR. Another 2 days, and he was gone. Terminated. Company policy violation. They didn't tell him how they found out. They didn't need to. But I wasn't finished. I drafted a letter myself. Anonymously. Sent it to every major firm in the region that he might apply to. Not slander, just a detailed description of his past behavior, lack of professionalism, and pattern of disruptive personal entanglements. I included the termination record, masked through a friend. No company in their right mind would take him now. Claire tried to call me once. I didn't answer. I didn't block her. I wanted her to see the silence. She sent a message, "What did you do to him?" I didn't reply. I didn't need to. She'd find out soon enough, day by day, as her shiny second chance started to rot. They thought they could humiliate me. That I'd shrink, crawl away, accept defeat while they played house in the ruins of my life. But I made sure they'd never build anything together. Not jobs. Not security. Not stability. I'd spent years building quietly, working late, giving everything I had to make our life solid. She lit it on fire. And I let her, but only once. Now they could live in the ashes. They could feel what it's like to start from nothing, with no reputation, no safety net, and no one left who still believes in them. The difference is, I know how to rebuild. They don't even know how to stand. I didn't hear from her again, not directly, anyway. Mutual friends fell silent. A few messaged me quietly after the dust settled. Words like disbelief, disgust, and what the hell was she thinking came up more than once. Her family. They stayed in contact with me longer than I expected. Her mother sent a handwritten letter a month later, apologizing again. Said she didn't know how to look Claire in the eye. Said she wasn't sure if she ever would. I never wrote back. I didn't need to. The house was mine. Legally, emotionally, entirely. I had it deep cleaned, cleared out every trace of her. I boxed up her things, what little she'd left, and paid a courier to deliver them. No note. No contact. Nothing sentimental. The first few weeks alone were strange, not because I missed her, but because silence feels different when it's not haunted anymore. The quiet that once filled me with dread now felt earned. My days became mine again. My mornings, my routines, my future, untethered from her shadow. Jason tried reaching out. A private message on a dummy account, begging me to stop what I was doing. Said I'd ruined his life. Said he lost his job, his reputation, his chance to finally be with her. I didn't respond. He'd already taken more from me than he'd ever deserved. And Claire? I heard rumors. That she was working freelance again. That she was trying to rebrand, rebuild, relocate. She'd lost most of her clients once word got out, not because I told them, but because she told them first, trying to spin the story. But the world is smaller than people think. Especially when your success is built on charm, and that charm evaporates the moment people sense the truth behind it. She moved in with Jason. For a while. They didn't last. Apparently, he blamed her for what happened. Said she ruined his life. Ironic, considering how proud she'd looked when she announced she was sleeping with him. In the end, they broke each other, quickly and completely. I never told my side of the story publicly. Never made a spectacle of it. Revenge, for me, wasn't about drama. It was about precision. It was about making sure she knew I wasn't the fool she imagined. That I could walk away with my dignity intact, and that she would have to live with the weight of what she destroyed. But beyond the anger, beyond the humiliation and collapse, what lingered most was something simpler, clarity. I had loved her. Deeply. Completely. I would have given her the world. And she traded that, for nostalgia. For recklessness. For a man who couldn't build anything but excuses. I don't envy her anymore. I don't think about her at night. I don't wonder if she's okay. Because I am. I got my life back. Not the same one. Not the naive, trusting, soft-spoken version. No. That man died the day she stood in our living room and asked me to fund her affair. But the man who rose from it. He knows his worth. He knows how to start over. And most importantly, he never let someone else write the ending to his story.